Hey, looks like the chat is actually working. Great. I just realized that I don't get the overlay chat working, so I'm a little bit confused how this works. I thought chat from Twitch and also chat from YouTube would go here as well. I just realized that I don't get the overlay chat working, so I'm a little bit confused how this works. Thought chat from Twitch and also chat from YouTube would go here as well. I just realized that I don't get the overlay chat working, so. But great, then let's do some live streaming today actually. Welcome everyone to the chat. No, not just to the chat, also to the stream of course. So let's go. As promised, we'll do some Elixir coding today. And maybe as a quick background, so there is this project I'm working on for quite a while. It's called Cozy Auth. It is, well, as the name says, authentication service. And the interesting thing is I started building this out in Rust, and that was a very nice and interesting experiment, and I learned a lot about Rust. And I realized that's probably not what I want to continue with, because it's, well, not the most efficient way to do that. It's quite a slow progress. And I think it's time to go back to Elixir, which was originally the thing I wanted to build this in. And so today is the day where we go back to Elixir and rewrite the stuff in Elixir actually. So let me quickly check what the chat is. So I'll try to keep an eye on all the chats as well, but yeah, let's see how well this works out. I'm not the most responsive person on chat, so let's quickly go into what we want to build today. So here's my editor, and here you can also see actually the project as it is right now. Right now it is all about a Rust project. There's some cargo toml in it, all the stuff that you usually know. And the other thing we want to do today is actually to use some nice AI tool that I discovered for myself just yesterday, and I'm pretty amazed about it. And that's Claude. So if you haven't heard of Claude, Claude is some of these AI tools similar to ChatGPT, but they have their own model. And the interesting thing about Claude is that they have something called projects. So you can create a project here, and within the project, you can do some pretty nice work. And I tested it out a little bit yesterday and want to go all in on this and do a lot of code generation from Claude. And we'll see how well this works actually with Elixir. So yeah, that's actually what we want to build today. And yeah, as you can see in the chat already, there's a link actually to the project. Cozy Auth is of course on GitHub. It's open source. It's a commercial open source project, so it's licensed under the Apache license, except the commercial part that is not free and is only if you pay or if you use the SaaS product that I'm building. But let's start on this. So for today, we want to go to Elixir. So basically this means we need to go get rid first of all the Rust code, obviously. So first, let's start by creating a branch for that. So this is something like Elixir Rewrite. And in the Elixir Rewrite, the first thing to do is delete all the stuff we don't need anymore. So what do we need to delete? So the first thing is, of course, the SQLX directory. This is actually some Rust type checking stuff. Pretty cool actually, but nothing we need. Of course, we don't need the cargo stuff anymore. We don't need the sub projects like the CLI. We don't need the server anymore. And there isn't even a target, even better. So let's delete all of this. Well, looks good. So let's quickly look into the compose YAML. Everything is ready here, looks good. So this is already the name here of the database already fits well for an Elixir project. I think that's because originally I started with Elixir, so it should still kind of work. So now let's go and start the database actually. So this is Docker compose -d. So we have a database running. Takes a second or more. And let's, in the meantime, have a look on the chat. So nothing going on the chat. Very silent right now. So database is running. So let's actually create our new application, and this is actually pretty much what we want to do. We want to call the, if you don't know actually Elixir, this is a pretty simple thing. You can use Phoenix new task to generate a new project, and usually you give it just the name of the project and it will generate the directory, but you can also tell it that it should work in the existing directory, and then you can also give it the app and the module name. And of course, we want to use UUID, so that's why we pass the binary IDs to it. So let's just do that. And yeah, some files already exist. Let's not care about that. That's all fine. Let's overwrite this. Let's also overwrite this. And of course that one. And then we are all set. Installing dependencies, compiling dependencies, well as every other language as well. Elixir requires to compile some stuff, needs to download something from the internet. That's all the good stuff that is giving us all the magic that we want. So here we are. It's running. So since we already have set up the database here in the background, we can just run mix setup, and it will prepare the database. Actually, migration's already up. Well, we didn't create it. We just created an application. So obviously there isn't anything in the database to migrate. See that everything is working, just run mix test. And it should simply work. There shouldn't be any failing test. Nice, all tests are green. So let's do the obvious and let's actually commit the cleanup. So first thing is let's add all the removed stuff. So we have removed a couple of things like this, and I think that's it. So remove old Rust code from the project. Where is my prompt? When things should work, they should actually work. So where is it not working? Oh, come on. This didn't work, so let's try it again. Oh, come on. So the key is here. Why doesn't it connect it? Let's try to plug it in again. Sometimes it's working, sometimes it's not. Okay, looks like I should better prepare for those kind of things. Git config global. So let's just disable the GPG sign. This is probably the easiest way, and then I can later just sign everything afterwards. But for the moment, it will make everything much easier. So once again, remove alt Rust code. Now, of course, we want to also commit all the new Phoenix code that we have just added. This is also the formatter. Actually, there has been a lot of stuff added to the git ignore, but that should be fine. The readme, no, that's not what I want to update. But of course, the mix file. Okay, so now we have a Phoenix project here. Let's also start it once and see that everything is working. So it's running on localhost. 4,000. Everything is working. Here's our project. Nice. Great. So what do we want to do actually? When we look at this Phoenix project here, we see there's a lot of code in it. And what we can do in Phoenix is, and that's something I want to try out today actually, because it allows us to do some really, really nice things. So usually what we do is we have these Phoenix gen tasks. So we can run something like Phoenix gen, let's say JSON, for example, to generate a. So what this basically means is it will generate a model. It will generate some functions to create, delete, list the registration objects here, and it will generate a JSON API, and it will use a context called passkeys for that. So context is basically a group of functionality within your Phoenix application. And then it will create an entity called registration, and it will create a table of registrations in the database. So that's basically what happens here. And you can even go on and say, okay, I want the registrations to have some specific fields. We don't fill this up right now. We will fill this up later. But that's actually what you could do here. Provide then some fields, like it could have a name of type text and so on and so on. But we don't want to do that right now. We just want to do the basic registration stuff. The interesting thing is you can do that, but it is quite limited, because what you cannot do with that is you cannot say, okay, I want an implementation for something like that. I want to generate some random number here or something like that. You're not that flexible. And the cool thing is you can do this actually by using Claude and doing some fancy AI stuff here to actually do exactly this. So let's generate this first here, because that's actually this is actually the cool thing on Phoenix, that you get all this productivity here by just having all of this set up right out of the box. So what we can do here is it already says what we should do here. We should basically copy this and then go into the router file and within our API, let's once again copy this one here and paste it in. So the LSP isn't, or the language server isn't started yet, so let's give that a second. This usually takes a little bit to recompile all the stuff for the language server. Shouldn't be our problem here right now, but we can do that. And if we do that, what we have now is we can run mix acto migrate to migrate the database. And as you can see here above, it also generated a migration. So it's already working. So we can now say mix Phoenix server, let it start. And if we now run get request against 4000/API/registrations, we should get actually a list. Obviously this list is empty because we didn't create any registration yet, but we could. So we could say something like XH post. We could do something similar here, registrations, and post something against it. This didn't work because it looks like it requires some data. So what is actually the exception here? Okay. So within the registration controller, when we have to create, it expects a registration to be provided. That's of course something we haven't done yet. But wait, let's see what happens if we just add JSON here. No, it doesn't also work. Okay. Good. It doesn't accept an empty data. But we can fix this later. Let's first see what we can actually do with this in Claude. So when looking into Claude here, what's interesting is we can create a project. So for our project, we want to create one. Let's call this, well, we are working on Cozy Auth, so let's call it Cozy Auth. And what we need to do is actually, we need to describe our project and the goals and the subject and so on. So this description is not the typical GitHub project description where you have a one-liner that you put there. Here we need to provide a lot more details, because what Claude actually does is in a project, every chat will automatically include the context of the project specific information. So this description here is included in the context of every chat. So it should be very precise because it's actually something reusable, and we should actually be very clear about what we are doing here. So in this case, what are we doing? I am developing an API in the Elixir programming language using the Phoenix framework. The API allows to register passkeys and to use existing passkeys for authentication. So what else do we want to say? One thing that we want to tell it is actually how we store our data. So data is stored in Postgres. And is there anything else right now what we want to tell it? Well, not really, not at the moment. We haven't made any decisions on any specific technology here. So let's just create the project like this. We can still update this at a later point. We can still say that we want to actually, I think it's here in the settings. Yeah, here. So we can still add here additional data so that it's included in all the chats that we have here in the stuff. So let me quickly have a look if anything happened. No, great. So let's continue on the Claude stuff. So the interesting thing on this is we can use this Claude 3.5 Sonnet model, which seems to be the best one for doing some coding stuff that we want to do here. And we can actually add some content here. So for example, so this is actually telling us we are working within the Cozy Auth project here. That's exactly what we wanted. We now have the project description here, and we can now start chatting. Within the project, we can have multiple chats. They will be listed here on the bottom. But there's another thing that we can do actually for our project, and that's actually adding content. So when we want to add content here, what we can actually do is we can upload a file. So let's actually do that. Let's go into my Linux environment, and here we have the Cozy Auth project. So what we want to upload actually is not everything from this project. What we want to upload here is just the relevant parts of the project, and the relevant parts right now are mainly here in the lib directory. So for example, well, let's show all files. For example, the router. This is actually something that we are interested in because we want to tell it to update our router. Another thing that we want to upload probably is, as we have already added this, is we probably want to upload our registration controller and our registration JSON. And maybe also we want to add the page controller and the page HTML, not this one. So let's open this one as well. So a couple of controllers that we have added, and let's also add here from the passkeys context the registration.exe. Wait. The passkey and this one. Let's see what happens. Passkeys. Of course, it didn't work. And let's also add here the registration. So uploading this was a little bit of work. Probably there's also drag and drop functionality, I guess. I didn't try this out yet. But we have now added a little bit of existing context. And this is actually the cool thing on this project. We can add to the project existing context, and with this additional context, this will be included in every chat that we do. So let's also add some custom instructions. So usually we use the custom instructions to tell Claude actually how it should respond. So one thing that probably makes a lot of sense is to tell it that it's the software engineer. So you are an experienced software engineer. You are talking to other software engineers and you don't have to explain your code if not asked for it. And another thing that I like to tell it is actually that you write SQL lowercase. Because I tried it yesterday and all the SQL was in uppercase, so that's not what I want. So now we have something here and we can actually do something with that, but let's first have a look into our code once again. So from our existing code base here, as I said, we have here the registration controller, and this registration controller actually, well, it has a create function, it has a show function, update, delete as usual. So this is not actually really what we want to do, and we also can have another look into the registrations. Not in the registration, the passkeys. If you look into the passkeys context, we also see all the cool things here, like list registrations, get registration by ID, create registration, and so on and so on and so on. We have all these functions, but the interesting thing is we don't necessarily need all of them. Let's start with the controller. So what we have in the controller, actually, we don't actually need all of that. What we need for doing a passkey registration is actually we need a way to create a registration, obviously, and we need to create and we need to actually send an assertion as an update to the registration so that it gets confirmed. So we have something like create a registration and confirm a registration. It's basically what we need as endpoints here. And we should get an updated version. So actually the gen scripts from Phoenix are not that powerful to do that out of the box, of course. So we cannot use it for that in that flexible way, but we can actually ask Claude to adjust the generated code just a little bit to do that, isn't it? So let's give this a try. So, wait, let's first tell it what we want in the end to have. So the first one is So what we want to provide here is actually we have a post request and we want to provide a user actually as a JSON. And the user JSON has some properties actually with the properties name, ID, and display name as payloads. And the second action that we need is a confirm action that gets web auth. No, we don't do this here. That gets, let's start with an empty payload. That gets an empty payload. The registration please update the artifacts. So let's see what Claude is doing here now. So hopefully this actually works, and it looks like it's doing a lot of things here. So what it has is an updated router and an updated registration controller. So let's start with the updated registration controller. So first of all, and that's actually a nice thing here, it cleaned up the stuff. You know, we had a lot more in it, and it cleaned up a little bit of stuff. So it removed the update and delete functions and so on here, and instead it added a confirm function. So the confirm function is obviously what we want to call to confirm this. Later we want to add some parameters here as well, but for the moment it's fine to do it like that. And the second thing that it did is actually it updated actually the user here with the user params, and the user actually and it calls here the create registration with the user params. Obviously the create registration will no longer work if we do it like that, but at least well, the idea is correct. So then let's have a look into the router that it updated. So it actually removed the resource here and just created two post endpoints, where one actually is the confirm endpoint and one is the registration endpoint, which is interesting because right now the registration endpoint, the confirmation doesn't have any ID in it. So this will probably not really work, but it is actually a good starting point. So let's do the obvious thing that we need to do here, and that's interact more with Claude. So the first thing is actually to update the registration controller the router to actually include an ID here. So of the registration to be provided in the URL. The ID is a UUID. So let it update the artifacts again. So we can actually see what happens. So it has now updated the router. So now it contains the ID as expected, and it also contains here now the ID in the confirm action. So we can now get the registration by that ID, and that's what we want. He would implement the confirmation logic. Nice. Yeah, that's fine, but that's nothing that we do here. So that's actually quite nice to see that it works like that. So let's update our code to do that. So let's just copy over. So let's copy over the controller and copy over the router as well. So from the router, copy these two things here. Here we go. Now we have the correct router, we have the correct controller. This will obviously not work because first of all, get registration is not defined in the passkey. So how's it called? Get registration. So it is like this. So this is defined. And yeah, the registration is unused. Let's ignore this one. So now we have our registration. So now we can say we have a name equals, well, how do we want to call the user? Let's call him foo. We have a display name that equals foo, and we have an ID that is, well, something. Let's do the call. It didn't work. So what's going on here? We have the display name, we have foo ID and name, but it looks like it expects something else here. So what exactly? I think it expects, it gets the user here, but that's not what we are providing. So we need to provide, well, let's see how we can provide. Let me quickly check this in the documentation. I always struggle with that. Where is it? Here's the syntax stuff. Dun, 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 dun. How do you pass? Okay. So in this case, we would probably do something like user equals, and then we have this. Let's see if this works. No, this doesn't work. I see. We also need to put this into a string. Why is this invalid? don't have to put the JSON here. Okay. Would be great to have an example. But okay, let's have a look into the registration controller test. Errors, update, create registration, JSON response, data. That's not what we're looking for. We want to know how it is created. So where's the user provided? Registration, create attributes. This is empty. Okay. Let's see. What do we want to do? So first of all, let's clean up the tests as well. We also don't need updates. And we don't need the deletion. Oh, we don't need this one. So create attributes is is a name of foo and an ID of type UUID. It's UUID. Isn't there a generator for this? I thought there was some generate, of course. And we want a display name of so this is not the registration, this is the user. So mixed test. No function matching. Body params, registration. it's not registration, it's user. Did I miss something? Post, registrations, user, create attributes. This doesn't work out well. But why? What has changed here? No, we didn't commit it yet, of course. Am I really in the right test here? Registration controller test. Test create registration, renders registration when data is valid, gives a form for, which is kind of expected. When data is invalid. Ah, now I see. You have to look for the right test, of course. So, the invalid case. What do we have now? Expected response with status. Part got 211. So, what's wrong here? Well, it doesn't work as expected. This is the invalid case. We get data and ID. So first of all, this is not what we want to get. We don't want to get the data here. But instead, we want the JSON response contain an ID. And when we use that ID, we want... No, we don't want to use that ID because there is actually no get here for doing this. So we just want it to be like this. And now we see that create registration of invalid data, update registration, which is different kind of thing. Ah, here it is. So now we see the test is failing because we are rendering the wrong data. So let's fix the data. We don't have the show. We just have the, oh wait, no, we have a show. So render a single one and it renders data. That's not correct. What it should render is actually this one. And what we don't have is actually this one. So here we go. Finally, the test got green. Of course, this one is not correct here because we don't get the right error. This one is not correct. So we have a lot of things to fix here. Looks like it didn't work that well with Claude AI. And we still haven't fixed the rest of the stuff. Okay, so let's quickly go through it. So we have the controller. We have this one, which should create a for too. And we have this one, which creates a registration. Let's start with the creation of the registration. So how is actually the registration created? This happens by doing, let me quickly check. Okay, that's good. Looks like everything still works. So, so when it comes to creation of the registration, what we want to do is we want to create, obviously, the registration, but we also want to save the registration, which happens here with the repo insert. But for the registration, we need to provide the correct data. So let's first look into setting up the database schema the correct way. So from the migrations, we have already the create registrations table being created, but we want to create a little bit more here. And not just this, and we find this actually from the existing code. So if you look in the Cozy Auth repository, we find it here in the server migrations file. So there's a create, no, the down, that's the wrong one, the up one. So here's actually the creation of the table. And we can just use that as well, but wait. I always forget how to do that. Active migration as not SQS, SQL. So exactly, there's an execute. Okay, that's what I wanted to look for. Tab undo, execute. I can use So now let's put some SQL into it. Let's just copy this over. And let's format it. So what we have here is a very simple SQL that we want to execute here. And here's the bad thing on WSL. So what we have is a table with an ID, which is a UUID, a user ID, a registration state, which is a JSON-B. So that's because we are using a library written in Rust to do that. And this library requires us to store this state in the JSON format. We have an expire date because, well, we don't want a registration to run forever. A confirmed add to actually make sure this has been confirmed so we can filter it out. Created and updated is also needed, but in Phoenix, no, in Acto, the default here is inserted add. And we put a primary key here, obviously, on the ID. So now let's just recreate our database. And makes Acto migrate. Here we go. We have set up the database. Of course, we should also have the corresponding down migration, which is execute and this is no. This is, how was it called? Job table if exists. That was what I wanted. Job table if exists. Registrations. For whatever reason, this is now in. So, exactly. So we have created the table as it was before, and we can close this. So now we need to look into the registration itself. So here we don't have anything right now, so we have to put it here. What kind of fields do we have? We have the ID, which is obvious. We have the, wait, we don't auto-generate this. I think this is done by the database. Primary key must be false. What? Okay. So what do we have? I should have opened this. The migration was create a table, register, so user ID. And, come on. I should have this syntax ready. Wait, I have a better idea. We can just copy this. And now if we go to Claude, actually, what we can do now is just start a new chat. So let's see what happens. And this is actually the nice thing about Claude. It includes the right things here. So here we have the updated registration actually. And what we can also do is we can theoretically add this to the context again and override the previous version this way. So we can actually update the correct thing as well, but it is named badly, so let's name it correctly, but it didn't do that. No, you didn't do that. But why doesn't it do that? Okay, but what we can do is actually we can also add it here, and then we have it here. We can delete this one. So if we now take the fields here, oh wait, let's copy the full module here. That's probably easier. So here we go. Now we have added all the fields that we need. I wonder if this can also be a text. Or it can be a binary. Is this the right one? Okay. So it is a UTC datetime times the UTC datetime. Great. Sounds like, well, looks like everything is fine here. Validate required. We have the expired date. We have the reg state, but not the confirmed at, which we want to update later, obviously. So that's also fine. Great. So let's try to make this work actually. We have this, this. So let's go to the passkeys. We have the registrations. We get actually the user being passed in here. And then with the user, we will create a new registration. Great. But let's quickly check how many tests are still failing. Now it's 8 tests. Wonderful. Not sure if this is actually what I want to do. Okay, so I think the use of Claude here did not work that well today. It looks like I have to give this a little more tries to make this kind of work for me in an effective way. So right now it looks like it creates more problems than it's solved actually by creating a lot of mess. What I tried yesterday was a very quick example where I didn't use the Phoenix generator and just used the Claude AI there. And this worked a little bit better instead of adjusting the generated code. Maybe I should try this next time. But for now, it looks like we have the registrations, we have the registration controller with the correct actions. This one here is not yet updated and fixed, so this is something to do. And we have the tests that don't work yet, but let's first make it work somehow. And we have set up the database schema in the correct way. So we have a couple of things ready. So that's for today's stream. And until then, build something cozy. We will see on the next stream then to continue from there.